Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I am really excited about our topic tonight. Tonight it is doing IVF, the number one thing that you need to know about sperm analysis. So a really important one. So let's dive in and cover it this evening. And discuss what it all means, because there's some very important things that you need to know to improve your IVF success in relation to sperm analysis. So if you have any questions or comments as we go through this evening, please be sure to pop them in the comments box below. I would love to answer them, or if you're watching the replay afterwards, please pop them down in the comments there and I will go and answer those for you. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Michelle Cooke. I'm a hormone and fertility naturopath. I'm a natural fertility educator and I'm a naturopathic emotional release practitioner. And I have a clinic based in Melbourne, Australia, and I see patients online and face to face. So generally when you go through the IVF process, they will usually get you to do a sperm analysis. So the technical name for it is semen analysis. So that's another name that it will be given. And some of the time you will get the response of from the specialist that everything's fine, everything's normal, okay? Sorry, just give me a minute. Yeah, so they go ahead and tell you that everything is normal. But is it really though? So we really need to talk more about this evening, and this is something that I'm extremely passionate about. And I certainly don't intend to take the wind out of your sails for the lads, okay? I'm simply highlighting that your role is such an important one when it comes to the collective fertility as a couple. So after all, we need to remember that it takes a healthy sperm and a healthy egg to make a baby, doesn't it? It's not just all about the egg and the woman. So very sadly, there's been a huge decline in sperm count and sperm quality issues since the 1980s to 2015, and obviously extending to 2022 as well. But this particular research article actually said that there was a 57% decline in sperm count worldwide. So a 57% decline. That's massive, isn't it? So huge decline there. So just so you know, semen is actually the fluid that's surrounding the sperm, okay? And it provides protection for the sperm. So for the survival and the ability for it to move, so the motility. And it contains high concentrations of the sugar fructose, which is an energy source for the sperm. Furthermore, semen is an alkaline fluid as well, and it helps protect the sperm against the acidic environment in the vagina. So really important. And there's actually nutrients found in semen as well that's there for sperm. So things like zinc, protein, calcium, citric acid, magnesium, B12, phosphorus, sodium, and potassium. And there's more than that as well, but I won't bore you with all the details. So what does a sperm analysis or semen analysis look at? Let's discuss that in a bit more detail. So generally it will look at sperm count. So this is looking at how much sperm is actually in that sample. And sperm count is definitely an important factor for sure, but if the morphology is poor, which I'll discuss next, and there's lots of abnormal sperm there, there's no great benefit to having an ample sperm count, but if there's a lot of abnormal ones there. Now, morphology. So this is looking at the size and the shape of sperm. They have to be a particular sort of shape and size. That's really, really important for the function of it. And it will show the amount of sperm that is normal when viewed under a microscope. So that's the percentage that will be on a semen analysis, will be the amount of normal sperm that they've spotted there. And there's different things that's looked at in terms of morphology. So it could be normal forms. So this is kind of a general overview of what percentage of sperm are normal. So that will be detailed there. Sometimes, depending on the IVF clinic, they may not actually include this further detail. It might just be simply morphology. So sometimes they might give you more details about head defects. And yes, sperm does have a head. So here's a little example for you to see. So this is known as the head here. And then it actually has a neck as well, which is kind of like the oar on a boat. Okay, so it's sort of navigating its way through. So that's really important for direction. And then the tail here, so that's obviously important for movement. So very, very, very important that all of these things are operating properly. So the head, the neck, and the tail. So they might also detail neck defects. So yes, sperm has a neck. It's very, very weird, but it does. And details about the tail as well. So they'll give you sort of a percentage of what kind of defects are found in those particular areas, which is really useful because there's specific vitamins and minerals that can actually help with those different areas, which is really interesting. And that's something that I use in the clinic a lot. So if it gives that detail, that's really, really helpful. And then we can look at sort of nutrients that can actually help support that defect that's actually found in the morphology. So the acceptable range, sorry, just a second, the acceptable range for normal morphology, or the amount of normal sperm, is, wait for it, 4%. So according to the World Health Organization, this is the new classification. They're okay with you having 4% normal sperm. So wait a minute, hold up, like this 4% normal sperm, this actually means that there's 96% of sperm that are abnormal. So this isn't good, is it? This means that they have things like 2 heads, 2 tails, they're abnormally shaped, whether it be in the head, in the neck, or the tail, and therefore they can't function normally, they can't swim, they can't actually penetrate the egg properly, and fertilization can't occur. So very, very serious issues. And they're not going to be working as well if this is the case, so that's pretty obvious, isn't it? Now, usually if you're doing IVF and your morphology falls below 4%, this is generally when they will act and do ICSI for you. So it's like giving sperm a little wheelchair to actually carry it along because it's not able to swim properly, and injecting it directly into the egg, so there's no swimming required. So most IVF clinics will follow that new, the new guidelines, which is 4% normal being acceptable. But there are a few select IVF clinics that follow the 15%, which is, they classify that as an ideal. But that's still not great, is it? Like at the end of the day, that's still 85% abnormal sperm. And there's a few things that can happen here. So in terms of, if there's abnormal sperm there, they could be doing break dancing on the spot, which is really cool, right? But we want it to actually progress and swim in the right direction towards the egg. in sort of a straight beeline kind of fashion. Now, they might be managing to swim, but they have abnormal defects. So there might be an abnormally shaped head, for example. And the shape of the head is extremely important, because if it's not appropriate and if it's not the right shape, it won't be able to actually penetrate through the egg. So really, really important. And that means that fertilization won't actually take place. So motility, this is the ability of the sperm to move properly in the right direction through the reproductive tract towards the egg. So that's talking about that or referring to that. If the sperm don't swim properly, fertilization won't take place because they're too busy doing little circles or going off in the completely wrong direction. And there's different types of motility, that will be assessed in a semen analysis. So generally they'll look at things like overall motility, progressive motility, non-progressive, immotile, which means they're not moving, and total motile count. So how many are actually moving, because some are not moving at all. And the aim for motility, again by the WHO guidelines or the World Health Organization, is 50% is the aim. But that's still not great, because that means that 50% of your sperm aren't actually moving at all, or they're moving in circles or in the completely wrong direction there. The other thing that's assessed is volume, so the amount of semen in the ejaculation. pH is another one, so whether it determines how alkaline or acidic your whether your semen's actually more acidic or more alkaline. That's really important, because it needs to be more alkaline, the semen, because sperm just simply can't survive in an acidic environment, and it does affect the sperm as well. So generally the pH needs to be between 7.2 and 8. Now, days of abstinence. So this is the number of days that the man's actually avoided sex or masturbation. It's important to do this, but not for too long. So generally the ideal recommendation is 3 days abstinence. If it's longer than that, the sperm get quite old, and this can make the semen analysis look particularly bad. Okay, so one that's not always done, but I think definitely should be, because I see a lot of abnormalities in terms of this, so you can actually request it, is anti-sperm antibodies. So this looks at immune or genetic issues there. Viscosity is another great one too, because it looks at whether the sperm is too thick and if it's clumping, and therefore it's difficult for the sperm to actually swim through the cervical mucus because it's kind of clumping together. And a high viscosity number will mean that the sperm is too thick and clumpy, so that's not ideal. And one that absolutely should be included, which generally is not, so you have to request this, and it is out of pocket, but it's totally worth doing, is the Sperm DNA Fragmentation Index, or the SCSA, which is a sperm chromatin structure assay. So it looks at the DNA of the sperm and looks at, how much broken kind of DNA is there in that sperm, which isn't ideal. So this is key to look at if you've got low morphology, so if you've got sort of a low amount of normal sperm, low concentration of sperm, and low motility. So if they're not actually swimming properly, they're not swimming at all, that's an issue. And also if your sperm analysis was classed as normal, but you were experiencing things like miscarriages and recurrent miscarriages. This needs to be checked, because sperm DNA fragmentation has a huge impact on fertility and it's a major factor for miscarriage and recurrent miscarriage. So please don't discount this. If you've been told that everything's normal, I would really think twice about that and get it thoroughly investigated. So what is the issue with sperm analysis? So when you've got a sperm analysis done, it's looking at whether it is okay for IVF, not natural conception. Because, there is instances where you would get a semen analysis done, not with the intention of doing IVF, but perhaps you're curious to see what's going on in terms of natural conception. So we need to remember that it's more designed for whether or not it's appropriate for IVF. For natural conception, we need those ranges to be a lot higher, don't we? Because they're having to do the work on their own. They're not, having that support of being placed in the petri dish in close proximity to the egg. So it's not a long, cumbersome swim for it. And in the case of ICSI, for example, there's no swimming required. It's injected straight into the egg. So totally different scenario. But for IVF, it's not actually ideal to have poor numbers of those things that I spoke about in terms of the semen analysis, because this can impact whether fertilization actually takes place, whether there's successful implantation, and if conception does arise, we need to consider the risks involved to that child as well, or the baby to be. Particularly with sperm DNA fragmentation, for example, which isn't commonly done, which should be, in my opinion. If there's breaks in that DNA, remember that chromosomes are actually made up of DNA strands. So to make an embryo, half the chromosomes come from the mum and half come from the dad, okay? So if you were told that your miscarriage or your recurrent miscarriages were due to having a chromosomal abnormality, for example, this could be due to a chromosomal issue with the mum, with the dad, or in my experience, it's generally from both, okay? It means that the embryo has the wrong amount of chromosomes, either too much or too little. So not all embryos with the wrong amount of chromosomes actually miscarry though, and that will generally result in a baby having a physical or mental disability. For instance, Down syndrome is one of the examples there. So really, at the end of the day, sperm quality issues in general, so any poor results found on a semen analysis that I spoke about, will contribute to poor fecundity. So your ability to conceive each month is drastically reduced as a result of poor sperm quality. It can lead to increased risk of miscarriage and increased risk of potential mental and or physical disabilities in your baby. So very, very serious stuff. We can absolutely do better than this. Don't you agree? I think it's so important. So how does poor sperm quality arise? Well, a big player is environmental aspects. So what are environmental aspects? Well, it's things like lifestyle factors. So smoking cigarettes, vaping, smoking marijuana, illicit drugs, alcohol, heavy metal exposure, pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, being exposed to toxins at work, being overweight, particularly around the midsection, because that indicates that there's estrogen dominance there, and the tissue around your abdomen, or the fat there, actually acts like a gland and produces more estrogen. If there's too much estrogen, this will lead to a decrease in testosterone, which will drastically affect things, for example, like sperm count, because we need healthy testosterone levels to produce enough sperm. Now, other issues are things like sperm temperature, so things like saunas, bike pants, wearing those sort of tight undies like trunks, for example, all the time, increases the heat in the testes. The testes actually hang away from the body for a reason, because it's trying to keep the sperm cool. It needs to be a specific temperature, so that can actually impact the quality and those parameters in semen analysis as well. Other endocrine disruptors, or hormone disruptors, so things like BPA, which is it's a toxin found in plastics. That's a really, really drastic one. Lots and lots of research on that, impacting sperm quality and sperm DNA. And you need to provide protection from the environmental toxins, in terms of ones that you don't have control over, and that's where antioxidants come in to actually be the shield maiden and actually protect the sperm from those toxins. Now, you're probably thinking, well, if there is sperm issues on the semen analysis, can they actually be treated? Absolutely. So a naturopath that specializes in fertility, and that's what I do, will be able to improve things like low sperm count, motility, morphology, all those things I spoke about, and sperm DNA fragmentation as well. What does the treatment involve? Well, it involves things like diet, lifestyle, nutritional medicine, herbal medicine. They really shine in terms of that, and assisting that way. I will also be able to help you interpret the semen analysis, and describe to you what it all means, break it down for you so it's easy to understand. As an example, if there's poor motility, so that's the ability for the sperm to swim in the right direction up the reproductive tract towards the egg, this can be due to an issue with the tail. Now, if there's any tail issues, selenium is an extremely important antioxidant and mineral that is involved in the whip-like action of the tail, and it's actually required for that. And it's such a common deficiency. In Australia, for example, the soils are very low in selenium. So even if you're eating really healthy, we tend to have low selenium levels anyway as a result of that. So if you're about to go through IVF, or you've done a few cycles and they've been unsuccessful, or you've been experiencing miscarriage or recurrent miscarriage, I would absolutely love to help you. So go ahead and book a 15-minute free discovery call where we can find out more about how I can help you and whether we'd be a good fit. So there's actually a link in the bio if you'd like to go ahead and do that. So make sure you do that. That's on Instagram. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I'll pop the link down below for you, to make it nice and easy. And yeah, basically, I've thoroughly enjoyed talking about that this evening. It's something I'm extremely passionate about, because it isn't all about the woman. We need to consider the man as well, because after all, it takes a healthy sperm and a healthy egg to make a baby. So don't forget that. Thank you so much for watching this evening, and if you have any questions, pop them down below. If you're watching on my YouTube channel, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week, 7:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, to talk about something hormone and or fertility related. Have a great evening. Thank you so much. Bye.